I know many of you are probably as excited as we are that the program has just started collection. The haulers just started collecting this week. This is like the third day of collection. I think we have about like 70 people here, and that is huge. That is so awesome. Thank you all for joining us. And we have like 70 people signed up for the next 2 workshops, which I think speaks volumes to how exciting this new program is for everyone. So thank you again for coming. So before we get started, I just want to introduce our team. So I'm Jane Pizer. I'm a Green Corps member working with the City of Bloomington. Green Corps, for those of you who don't know, is an AmeriCorps program focusing on sustainability initiatives around Minnesota. And the main focus area of my service here is waste reduction, and I'm assisting Bloomington with the rollout of the Curbside Organics program. Here with me is Laura Horner. She is Bloomington's Solid Waste Program Coordinator. And we also have Ellen Viales, the Deputy Director of Public Works. So Laura and Ellen want to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Horner. I'm the Garbage and Recycling Program Coordinator here in Bloomington. We've been planning the rollout of organics for a couple of years now, so we're very excited to have this program up and running and to have the opportunity to share some information with you all tonight. So thanks again for joining.
I'll just say a quick hello. I'm Ellen Viales, and I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works for Bloomington. And Laura and I have been working on this for quite a while, so we're excited that the program is getting rolling, and we're excited to share with you some information tonight that hopefully will make your collection of organics easier. So we'll have lots of time for questions, but we'll turn it back to Jane to get us rolling.
Okay, so you will hear again from Laura and Ellen later on when they show us how they collect organics in their kitchens. And they'll also be available throughout the presentation for questions. Okay, so we're going to dive in here into our agenda for the meeting. So I wanted to start off with a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. And this is the agenda. So we're going to start off with an introduction to organics recycling. So basically what organics recycling is and the process. Then we're going to go into the benefits of participating. We're going to talk about how to get started at home, what you can and cannot compost, what to do if you're unsure whether to compost something. We're going to talk about some food waste reduction tips, and then we're going to wrap up with the post-presentation poll and some time for questions. And before we fully jump into the presentation, I want to review a few functions of WebEx that can be used throughout the meeting. So if you have any questions or comments during the meeting, you can raise your hand or type in the chat box. The chat box is on the right side of your screen, and the raise hand icon is on the bottom of the screen. It's about here. And please be sure to mute your audio during the meeting unless you're talking. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded, so you can come back to it again later as well. And we'll also have the slides available for you to look at later in addition to that. We've allotted an hour-and-a-half time tonight for the presentation, but we recognize that we might not use up the whole time. We want to make sure we have enough time for questions in the middle and towards the end. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so what is organics recycling? So organics recycling is the process of turning organic material like food scraps and other compostable items into a nutrient-rich soil amendment, and that's usually what we call compost. And you can use that compost in gardens, on fields, and it adds nutrients and improves soil structure and quality, all of which helps grow healthy plants and crops. Some people compost in their backyard, and there are also dedicated commercial organics recycling facilities who do all the heavy lifting of turning organic material, food waste, and yard waste into compost. And we will be sending the organic material you put into your cart to a commercial composter, which can handle the volume from thousands of households at a time, which is pretty cool. So where will Bloomington's organics go? So Bloomington haulers can take our organics to any licensed commercial organics recycling facility, but the haulers will be taking the material to the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux Community Organics Recycling Facility to be turned into compost. In the future, we would love to coordinate tours of the facility to see the process of how food scraps are turned into compost for residents. And we're also working on providing some opportunities for residents to pick up compost throughout the year. Still finalizing the details, but we'll be sure to let people know. And the best way to learn about when we're going to have that available is to sign up for the regular garbage and recycling e-subscribe list to get updates. And you can sign up on our website, blm.mn/garbage. Okay. So now this is just a little video about kind of how food scraps get turned into compost.
We put our food scraps in a bin and it goes away. And as long as it goes away, we don't think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. Yes, that eggshell may look like it's no good, but it is. In fact, it's great. It's great for making a nutrient-rich soil amendment called compost. So how do we go from that eggshell in the kitchen to that dirt-like substance at the compost facility? Well, let's grab a load and go. Those food scraps, paper towels, and such are picked up by a hauler who takes them here, an organics composting facility. The load is weighed and tipped. Then the organics, called greens, are mixed with things such as leaves or wood chips, called browns. It's kind of like making hot dish. You don't want too many tater tots, and you don't want too much cream of mushroom soup. Naturally occurring microbes go to work, and just like when you work hard, things heat up, and that heat kills any bacteria and germs. Because we're going to be composting on an industrial scale, you can put things in your green bin that you wouldn't stick in a backyard compost bin. Things such as meat and dairy products, even bones. After a few weeks to months, compost is served, and plenty of places are ready to belly up to the buffet.
I'm Rob Friend with SET in the mulch store, and our compost is purchased by homeowners and all the way to big construction companies, and it's used for gardens all the way up to large DOT jobs.
Landscapers and road crews like this one use compost because it's really good at preventing rain and runoff from causing erosion. And adding compost helps plants grow faster and better.
You're taking a product that has been in the past put into your garbage and you're turning it into a reusable resource.
All right. So that kind of just gives you an overview of how food waste is turned into compost. Okay, so now we're going to go over why you should participate in the program. So a 2013 waste audit conducted by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency found that 30% of the waste stream was organic material that could be recycled. It's good for the environment. Recycling our organic waste means that we're not wasting resources. We're turning that waste into compost that helps improve soil health and reduces the need for synthetic fertilizers. In Bloomington, our regular garbage is taken to the Hennepin Energy Recovery Center, known as HERC, where our garbage is incinerated and converted to energy. By diverting our organics from HERC, we're freeing up space for other material that cannot be composted to be processed as energy rather than landfilled. Organic material reduces the efficiency of HERC because it's wet and heavy and is difficult to incinerate. And you should also participate because your neighbors are doing it. 18% of residents have already signed up for the program. It's a great way to get all the benefits of composting without having to do it yourself. And it also supports the local economy. The compost industry in Minnesota alone supports around 700 jobs and produces around 148 million in gross economic activity each year, which is really cool. Okay, so how do you participate? So the first step is to sign up for a cart, which I'm sure many of you already have received your carts. But if you want to sign up for a cart, you can visit blm.mn/organics or call, this is the number for utility billing, and they can hook you up with a cart. And if you're part of the city's garbage and recycling collection service, you're eligible to sign up to receive a cart. And many of you likely already received your carts, but if you signed up after December 1st, you'll receive your cart the week of April 11th. And once you receive your cart, you will also get a welcome packet to help get you started. The pack includes a fridge magnet with an acceptability list on it and 10 compostable bags, and also a guide that will help you set up your kitchen for success. So once you get all that, you're going to start collecting organic material in your home. You're going to place bagged organic material into your cart and then set your cart out weekly for collection on the same day as garbage. Okay, so the most commonly asked questions we get are about what's accepted and what's not. And the simple rule of thumb is If it grows, it goes. Any and all food waste can go in, even if it's moldy. And you can even include meat, bones, and dairy, which should not be going in a backyard compost. The piles at commercial compost facilities get hot enough to break these down, whereas backyard composting piles do not. You can also include paper and cardboard that isn't recyclable. So this is like egg cartons, pizza boxes, and like low-grade paper. And egg cartons and pizza boxes don't need to be bagged. And you can also put in small amounts of grease, so the amount that you would be able to wipe up with one paper towel or less. And once you get the hang of collecting in your kitchen, you can even think of including some waste from other parts of your home. So this can include hair, nail clippings, cotton swabs, and even dead houseplants. And lastly, you can include anything that's BPI certified. So this would be compostable plates, cups, silverware, and compostable bags. It's not enough if it's just green plastic. You need to see the BPI logo. Otherwise, it will not break down and it will just end up in the finished compost, and nobody wants like a whole cup in their garden. So make sure it has the BPI logo on it. And this is kind of what it looks like. It's like a leaf in a circle with like a little arrow here. So what you can't compost. So for what cannot go into your compost cart, your organics recycling cart, anything that would go in your trash, recycling, or yard waste. This includes glass, metal, large pieces of wood because they have their own systems. Anything dangerous to human health. So that would be like, again, glass, chemicals, large quantities of grease or oil, and things like human or pet waste because they might contain pathogens. And you want to avoid anything that might contain plastic. Plastic is everywhere, and it can be hard to figure out if something has a plastic coating. So for example, parchment paper often has a plastic coating to keep things from sticking, and many freezer boxes do as well. And fabrics that have synthetic fibers are also typically plastic, which means dryer lint usually has plastic in it. And we wouldn't want that ending up in the compost. So unless you're absolutely sure there's no plastic in something, don't put it in your organics bin. When in doubt, throw it out is generally the rule of thumb. And the whole process runs so much smoother if there's no contamination in the first place. So if you're really unsure about what to compost, there's a couple of websites you can check. So we have a detailed list of what is accepted on our website, blm.mn/organics, and a detailed list of what is accepted and what's not accepted. And then bpiworld.org has a list of all packaging products that are BPI certified. So this includes like compostable bags, compostable takeout, like food takeout containers you might get from a restaurant, anything like that. And if you're really unsure, you can always contact the city and ask if a certain item is compostable. And again, when in doubt, throw it out is generally what to do if you're really unsure. Okay, so now we're going to play a little game. I'm going to say the name of an item, and you can just type in the chat yes or no if it should go in your recycling bin, organics recycling bin, or not. I'll give you like 30 seconds. Just type yes or no in the chat if you feel comfortable. Okay, so starting out here, we have a chicken bone. Is this compostable or not? Okay, good. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. It is compostable, but it's only compostable in commercial facilities, so you don't want to put this in your backyard compost, but you can put this in your organics recycling bin. Okay, so our next one is parchment paper. So is this parchment paper compostable? Okay, this one's a little trickier. Okay, so parchment paper is only compostable if it has the BPI logo on the box somewhere. And as you can see, this one does not have the BPI logo on it. Any waxy lined wrapper should be going into the garbage unless it's BPI certified. So this one is a no.
Yes. And just to add to that, Jane, there are definitely a few types and brands of BPI certified parchment paper that you can find at the grocery store.
Yep. So as long as it has the BPI logo on it, you're good to go. Okay, so our next item is a to-go coffee cup. This is a smart group here. Okay, yes, this is compostable. This is the BPI logo right here on the container. So if this has the logo on it, it means it is compostable in your organics recycling bin. So it's like like a little circle with like the arrow. That's what you want to look for.
And then,
Okay,
yeah, just to reiterate, sorry, Jane, but so anything that didn't have that, like a hot coffee cup or a plate that was shiny that you might have in an event, if there's any sort of lining and it doesn't have that logo, then you have to assume that there's the plastic lining and it goes in your garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, so our last item is this glass bottle. So is this compostable? Okay, yes, it is not compostable. This should not be going in your organics recycling bin. But glass is recyclable, so please recycle. Glass is the worst contaminant in compost. It's a hazard for employees at these organics recycling facilities, and it's very difficult to sort out of like the finished compost when it shatters. It can become very fine. So please recycle your glass, not organics recycle. Okay, thank you guys for participating.
Jane, I see a question in here about paper ice cream containers that I thought maybe we could address right now.
Sure, what's the question?
So are paper ice cream containers compostable?
So I think typically ice cream containers have a plastic lining, like most freezer items, to prevent leakage.
Yes, yep.
But I'm not sure if there's any compostable brands.
Yeah, I don't think there are any that I am aware of. So I would definitely say that any paper ice cream container should go in the garbage.
Yeah.
And then there is another question here about toilet paper or paper towel rolls. I think that can be a bit confusing because those can be recycled, or technically they could be composted. But since those are a recyclable item, it would be a higher use to put those in your recycling cart and turn that into paper again rather than composted. I'll just keep going because I see a few more questions for you. Someone is asking about tea bags.
Yes, tea bags are compostable.
Yes. I would caution that if it's a tea bag, like a plastic tea bag, of course, those would be garbage. But if it's a regular old, like Lipton paper tea bag, those can go right in your organics. Keurig coffee pods is the next question.
I do not believe those are compostable.
Yeah, that's correct. There are, I believe, 1 or 2 brands that are BPI certified that you can look up online, but the majority of those pods are all going to go in your garbage. The next,
I do see some questions about removing the staple on the tea bag.
Yeah, so the staple would be non-compostable, so I would remove that. I kind of just tear it off of the string there. Lots of good questions.
Yeah. Okay, I think I saw one more about dog fur. It's dog fur compostable. So yeah, it is.
That can go in there. It's just the pet waste that we want to avoid, and that's more so just because of the pollution control agency's permitting requirements. You can't put any of that material in the organics. And then there's a question about dirty paper towels or Kleenex.
I think it's generally advised to avoid Kleenex for like human health, but I think lightly used paper towels are okay.
That's correct. Yep, and I think a tissue would be fine. I think the composting facilities are okay with that.
Okay.
But anything else from the bathroom, you'd want to make sure you put in the garbage or in the toilet.
Yeah. Okay. We will have some time for Q&A in a couple slides, so I guess we should just keep going.
Great.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys for the great questions. So we're going to kind of go over how to get started at home now. So first, you're going to need some sort of container inside your home to collect organics. Doesn't have to be fancy as long as this works for you. And you can buy a dedicated container, or you can even reuse something like an old ice cream container or like an old coffee tin. And then it's important that it's easy to access and it's almost as easy as your garbage, so that you get in the habit of tossing your food waste into the compost and rather than the trash. And it's also helpful if you have a visible label on your container, so that it's a lot easier to remember what goes in if you see it right on the side. And then you're going to want to make sure that your organics are contained in a bag before you take it out to your cart. And this can be a compostable plastic bag or a regular brown paper bag. And finally, to keep things neat and your bags in good shape, it's best to take your bags out to your cart frequently, like once or twice a week. Depending on the material and how quickly the container fills up, you might need to adjust this schedule and find out what works for you. Okay, so kitchen containers. So as far as a container to collect organics goes, you have a variety of options. You can get these in small or large sizes and in any material or color you like. You can buy them or you can reuse an old container you already have. And if you generate a lot of organics, you might want to look into the larger containers. There's some 13-gallon sizes and even larger ones like 36 or 64 gallons. And you can even downsize your regular garbage if you end up producing a lot more organics than regular garbage. Yeah, Hennepin County offers some free stickers for labeling your containers, and this is an example of what those labels look like here and here. So if you don't have a container yet, the city does have containers to provide to residents. There will be 2 opportunities coming up where residents can come pick up a container for free. So we'll be at the farmers market on this Saturday, March 12th from 9 to 1. And we'll also be at Public Works, which is right across the street from Civic Plaza, on March 17th from 10 to 2. And you can come pick up one of these containers. This is a sure close container. It has like a vented lid. And these are awesome. So yeah. Okay, so what bags can you use? So you can either use a compostable plastic bag that is BPI certified, or you can use a brown paper bag. You're going to want to make sure to look for that BPI logo again on any compostable plastic bags you use. It's not enough if the bag just says biodegradable or it's like a green plastic. It needs to have the BPI logo, this logo right here, so that we know it'll break down in the commercial composting process. And brown paper grocery bags are also acceptable. So these are some bag brands and sizes that you can find commonly sold in stores. These are some brands that are certified by BPI, compostable. Again, you can use brown paper bags from the grocery store. And bags usually come in about 4 standard sizes, depending on your needs or your family size. I think the most common is the 3 gallons. So that's kind of like the kitchen collection container. There's like a 13-gallon for an under the sink container. And then there's some cart liner sizes as well. So this is not an all-inclusive list, but we did some research and called some stores earlier in the year and found some stores that sold compostable bags to offer to residents throughout the year, or to come buy them. And I want to make sure that you guys know where to get bags. So most supermarkets, co-ops, and hardware stores have them in stock. So like Ace Hardware, Target, Walmart, Cub, all of those. And you can usually find them with the other trash bags. And again, look out for that BPI logo. There's a lot of green bags out there that look compostable but are not. And if you don't want to make a trek out, you can also order these bags online. I know a lot of these brands are sold on Amazon. And again, if compostable bags aren't something you want to spend on, you can also use paper bags in any size as long as they're plain paper. So in mid-April, participating residents in the program will be receiving a voucher for a free box of 130 3-gallon size kitchen compostable bags. Bags will be available at Fratelloni's and are provided by the City of Bloomington. So keep a lookout for this in your mail for a free box of compostable bags. Okay, now we're gonna tour some kitchens. So I'm gonna show you guys kind of how I compost at home, and then Laura will demonstrate a little bit of a different approach, and Ellen will show how she composts as well. So I guess I can kick things off here. So I typically keep my compost bucket like right here next to my stove, and I move it to my cutting board when I'm chopping veggies. And I keep it next to my stove because that's where my coffee station is. So here I just use an old Folgers container, and I cut some holes in the lid, just poke some really small holes in the lid so that moisture doesn't accumulate in the bottom of the container, and that helps with the smell. And then in my container, I have a coffee filter and some coffee. I have some apple cores and lettuce and some ginger. And I just took so like once a week I take my bag out and I take this to a drop off. And I just did it like 2 days ago, so that's why there's like nothing in here. But this gets pretty full, and if it gets like super full, I'll throw this in my fridge just so that it doesn't smell, and I can like make sure that it's not like stinking on my counter. Yeah, okay, so Laura or Ellen, you want to show how you compost?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I typically keep my container just right here next to my fridge. Or if I'm having guests over, sometimes I'll keep it under my sink to kind of get it out of the way. And then whenever I'm cooking dinner or prepping food, I bring it over to my cutting board. And I use the shirt clothes container that's available for residents to pick up. So what I like about the container is you can kind of prop the lid open. So as I'm cooking, the lid is just open and I can peel veggies right in there. The strategy that I like to use is I don't actually put the compostable bag in the container as I'm filling it up. So I just have an unlined container. And then once this is full, I'll grab my compostable bag. And then I just empty the container right into the bag. So I think that this can kind of help, especially if there's more wet food scraps, to not have that bag breaking down inside of the container if I don't fill it up really quickly. And then the other tip I wanted to share is sometimes during summer months when it's hot and I might have more of a concern about fruit flies, I'll keep my container in. I don't know if you can really see that here, but I just have an example container in the freezer. So I'll keep it handy there and then pull that out when I'm cooking and keep space in the freezer when I'm done. So that's kind of my setup. And Ellen, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, I have a fairly similar setup to both Jen and Laura. I typically keep my compost container in my refrigerator, so I'm just going to grab it out here. I don't have one of the shirt clothes containers, but I have another one that kind of looks like that. I typically put the liner in my container ahead of time and just collect it there. And I find by keeping it in the refrigerator, I kind of keep it on, one spot on the shelf, that I don't have really any problem with smells or things like that as the week goes on, unless I have some really stinky onions or something like that. But for the most part, it smells just like it would if you were keeping vegetables or something like that in your refrigerator. So today I've got kind of a lot in my container. I've got some tulips that I just recycled that were kind of going after a friend gave it to me. I've got a compostable napkin here. I think somewhere down in there I have a tea bag from the other night. And I know people were asking about the tea bags. It's nice to make sure that the little, sometimes they come with a little tag too, and sometimes that might be plastic or whatever. So I usually just tear that little piece off and throw the tea bag in. So anyway, so that's the setup I have. And then I also wanted to kind of share with folks, now when I do a lot of entertaining or have people over for a meal, and particularly when I'm having a bigger group, I'll make sure that I get some compostable like plates and silverware. So I've got a couple of examples here. You can find most of this stuff at Target or any of the grocery stores, really, I find that I can do it. But I have some compostable silverware. They have bowls. You know, they have kind of smaller plates, and then they have kind of dinner-sized plates. And I'll typically just use plain white napkins because those can go right in. If you're looking for the compostable silverware, again, you're going to want to look for that. I got to see if I can get the camera right. That BPI logo. The box that I have definitely has the BPI logo on it. And so I'd encourage you to look for that. And then, like, I'll just have a spot in my kitchen where I put a plastic bag out and I'll put one of the compostable. This is a little bigger size compostable liner. I'll just put that out, and then all of that stuff, once people have used it, can go right in here, and it could be tied up and taken right out to your cart. So it's a real easy way to entertain, particularly if you don't like doing dishes or that kind of thing, and you still want to use some, you know, stuff that you won't have to go in the dishwasher or be washed by hand. So it's a good way to entertain a group. So I'll turn it back to you, Jane.
Okay, thank you so much. That was awesome seeing how everyone sets their kitchens up to compost. And hopefully provide some good examples for everybody in the meeting to kind of check out and see how other people compost. Okay. So I think something super important to talk about when we're going into composting at home are some like troubleshooting and commonly asked questions. So I'm going to go over some of those to help you guys kind of ease into composting at home and maybe hopefully answer some concerns you might have. So one issue that people have reported in the past are bags breaking or leaking. This is because compostable bags are designed to break down in the composting process. So there is, you know, that's a valid concern. And if they're not holding up in your kitchen, you don't even have to use them as a liner. So you can do what Laura does, where she doesn't keep her organics in a lined bin. She keeps her organics in just a plain old short closed container and then puts the organics in the bag and ties it off right before she's going to take it to a drop off. So that way you avoid having those liquids kind of sit in the bag all week, and that can help avoid the breaking down of the bag. Another reason why bags might break down is liquids. So if you have a lot of very liquidy food waste like watermelon, veggies, any of that stuff, you're going to want to drain those liquids from your food scraps before you put it in your bin, so that you can avoid having those liquids like collect, make the bag really heavy, and also like speed up the breakdown process. So you can drain those in your sink, and you can also line the bottom of your bin with paper towels or a newspaper that are also compostable, just to soak up those liquids before you take that out to your cart. You're going to want to use the container with air holes. So like I mentioned earlier, I poked holes in the lid of mine, and that helps aerate and like alleviate the moisture in the bin, because like I said, food waste does produce moisture, and that moisture will make the bag break down faster. So having the air holes allows for ventilation and will help your bags last longer and also help with the smell. And lastly, you want to make sure your bags are not expired. Also, if you want to do some trial and error with different bag brands to see which one works for you, that is something I did personally, and that really helped me find a bag brand that I liked. And yeah, making sure they're not expired is really important. They expire about a year after purchase, so make sure you're using them. Okay, so the second worry people have are fruit flies and like smells. And if you're concerned about these inside, these are just some tips to kind of help prevent these issues and take care of them if they do arise. So basically, remember that the material that you're putting into your container is the same as it would be if it was going into your garbage can. So the smell's not going to be any worse than your garbage. And if anything, you're taking it out more frequently, so it might smell less even. And if you're storing it in your fridge or freezer, this will help extend the time you can keep it in your kitchen. It will prevent smell. Meat, fruit, and vegetables. And you can store these in your refrigerator or freezer until collection day, and then you take it out on collection day. And this is especially helpful during the hot and humid months. Making a fruit fly trap, if you have fruit flies, so I've done this before. I take the mason jar and I do apple cider vinegar, some water, a little bit of Dawn dish soap, a couple drops to break the surface tension. And then I do like a plastic, or you can use foil or something, a cover, and poke holes in it. And that just attracts the fruit flies. Put that next to your container, and hopefully the fruit flies will go into the trap and not your compost container. And then you can also wrap up your proteins that might be like super smelly. You can wrap those in newspaper or paper towels so that the smell doesn't affect you as much. And then outdoor pests. So we know people might be concerned about pests getting into their carts. Two most common pests are maggots and squirrels. You might see maggots during hot months. They're naturally occurring and they're just larvae of flies. We know it might be gross, but they're not going to harm you. And we wanted to provide some tips to reduce the occurrence of maggots, but also just know if you do see them in your cart, there's nothing to panic about. And also, if you have issues with squirrels in your regular garbage, you might have the same issue with squirrels in your organics container. So here are some tips to prevent pests and prevent maggots and that kind of thing. So in the hot summer months, again, you want to keep your food scraps in the freezer or the fridge until collection day. This will just prevent them from sitting in your cart in the hot, humid weather all week. Keeping your cart clean is also super important. So cleaning out your cart with borax and water or vinegar and water and letting it dry out in the sun. This will help get rid of odors and like not attract pests. A tip I learned recently is that you can spray your cart with a non-toxin repellent to deter squirrels. So this can be a natural repellent of cayenne pepper, some oil and dish soap, or it can also be a non-toxic repellent that you spray the cart lid with. So this is like critter out or deer off. And also, if a squirrel does happen to chew a hole in your organics cart, you can call utility billing and they'll get you a new cart so that you don't have to use a cart with a hole in it. And you can also line the bottom of your cart with paper products. So taking like leftover paper grocery bags or pizza boxes or newspapers to line the bottom of your cart. And these will sop up any liquids or like residues and will help reduce smells. And you can also line your cart with like lawn and leaf bags. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that people are aware that the drop-offs are still open because the Curbside Organics program is only available to residents that are part of the city's garbage and recycling collection service. We want to make sure residents who live in multi-unit properties, so like apartment complexes, still have access to organics recycling. And the city is still offering these drop-off locations for all residents, and you can sign up on our website if you're interested. And these are kind of the same process. You would just, instead of curbside, you would drive out to one of these locations and take your bag and drop it off into one of the dumpsters. And these are located at West Bush Lake Park near Shelter 1, Valley View Park, and the South Hennepin Recycling and Problem Waste Drop-Off Center is also located in Bloomington, and you can take your compost there. Okay, so now we have a little time for a Q&A. I see the chat's pretty active. So does anybody have any questions so far? You could type in the chat, you could raise your hand or unmute. Just want to give some time. Okay.
Jane, we have one question here, which I think has come in a couple of times. There was a question about bird seed and sunflower seeds and shells.
Yes, those are compostable. Those can go in your organics bin. As long as it comes from like a plant, yeah.
So when you guys talk about putting it in your fridge or freezer, that would be a relatively small container. If you store that till the garbage is picked up, why do we have 13, the big containers? And the city has also said, oh, you're going to throw away so much in the organics, you can downsize your garbage cart. If we're just getting rid of a little container in our fridge each week, that's not very much.
Sure.
Well,
Jane, do you want me to jump in on that one?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good question. The reason the carts are the size that they are is for the haulers to be able to automatically tip those into their carts. So that 35 gallon cart size is that smallest option for them to tip. And in terms of the amount of material you might generate, the studies that the MPCA has continued to do continue to find that about 30% of your garbage is likely material that could be composted. So for me, that's maybe about maybe two bags a week of that 3 gallons. So we certainly don't anticipate that anyone would fill a full 30-gallon cart size, but again, that's just the size of the container that the haulers can tip.
So even in the summer, you might have it in the fridge, then bring it out there and have another one in the fridge and do it because I have too much stuff in my fridge and freezer to have,
Yeah.
Well, and Pamela, it's not a requirement to put it in the refrigerator or freezer.
But it would be nice if you don't,
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of like garbage, how you treat garbage in your kitchen is a little bit how you would treat the organics. So if you fill up your small container and you want to take that out and put it in your bigger cart out in the garage, that's fine. The keeping it in the refrigerator or the freezer is maybe just to help keep down the smells for you if you're, if you don't like stinky garbage around is kind of the rule on that.
Yeah.
So
and particularly, sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if you want to be, taking it out to the compost cart all the time, you can do that too. It's just we find it a little more convenient to have something handy right in the kitchen so that it, is right at hand when you're doing your cooking or, cleaning up.
Right. And most of my Minneapolis friends do that. I like the idea of not, Laura, that you don't have the bag in there. I do not want to spend for those special bags 2 or 3 a week. So that the idea of having it in a container and then putting it into a brown paper bag, like I get all the time when I forget my recyclable card.
Yep.
That sounds better. One guy said he puts like newspaper in the bottom of the brown bag, but then can we just drop that in the cart? We can't staple it, or we shouldn't staple it, right?
Right. So I would maybe just recommend folding it down. You don't need to make sure it's securely, totally tied up for the brown paper bag, because it is going to be then contained inside of that.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a question just to re-ask about the compostable plastic bags. If we use paper grocery bags, and I'm a little bit obsessed about carrying out garbage every day. So if I put all the compostables into a brown grocery sack, they do not need to go into the plastic bag as well. Is
Correct.
that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
You can use either type of bag to contain the material.
Okay. So if I want to continue to be daily obsessed, I can do that.
You can definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Those are good
How about the
questions.
Sun Current newspaper? Can that go in there?
Yep. Newspaper would be just fine. I would recommend that you recycle your newspapers rather than compost them, because again, that's going to be just a higher environmental use to turn that back into paper again rather than composting it. But if you want to use newspaper to help maybe soak up some liquid at the bottom of your cart for those sorts of reasons, that's definitely good to put in your organics. So I guess to reiterate, you could put it in either cart.
There's a couple more. Oh, sorry, go ahead. There's a couple more questions in the chat, but we'll just take questions first. So
okay. So I have another question about the we're not in the new organics recycling program yet, but I have questions about the recycling bins that we've had for years. Is there a way that we can have a very explicit list of what does or does not go into that recycle bin? Because I've been told that a lot of what I'm recycling never makes it to any kind of recycling, even though it has the triangular logo on the carton or container or whatever. So I'm confused about whether I'm recycling or not, or do I just put out 2 cans of garbage?
Sure. No, that's a great question, and we want to make sure that that's clear for folks. We are actually in the process of finalizing a whole garbage and recycling services guide that includes a very detailed recycling guide that'll be mailed out to all residents, probably in the middle of next month.
Oh, good.
And it actually answers a lot of frequently asked questions about what those numbers on the recyclables mean, and talks a little bit more in depth about the types of plastics you can recycle. So I think we are aware that there is still confusion out there about recycling, and I think that will help clear it up. And then we also will be updating our website to make sure that information is clearer.
Okay.
So more come on that.
Thank you. That would be great.
I just found out after we used our little container that we had, I found it easier to take the stainless steel thing I had next to it to put all the paper stuff in. And then I just transferred that to a paper bag outside because the compost was filling up too quickly. We only have a small container. There's just two of us here, but I cook a lot. So there's tons of stuff that's going in there. And we're also trying to figure out how big a bag we should use, how often we should recycle it. Can you help us?
For recycling, yeah, so we would recommend that you can use a brown paper bag to collect your recyclables, or you also could use like a larger plastic garbage bag to collect your recyclables in your home. And then it's just important to make sure that you put your recyclables loose inside of your cart. So then I would dump out that plastic bag and put it into the cart so the plastic bag isn't getting recycled. Does that fully answer the question?
No,
Or did I miss?
my question is how, if you have the 3-gallon bag or whatever it is, the bags that you sent out, how full can that be?
Oh, sure.
Or you should tie it up and put in a new one.
Oh, I understand. I would recommend, because those bags, again, they can't have any plastic on the top to
Yep.
like a regular garbage bag does. I typically leave maybe 15% of the bag empty at the top, so I have space to actually take some of the bag itself and tie a knot with the top of the bag.
Okay.
So I definitely never, I try to make sure I don't overfill it so I can use the bag itself to tie it closed.
And if in the course of a week, if things are leaking, how quickly do they dissolve? If there's any moisture.
Sure, and Jane, feel free to jump in on these two. But I would say, Jane, if you want to pull up that bag tip slide.
Yes.
There are some good tips to help keep those bags from breaking down. One would be to actually have some air holes in the container that you're using to help make sure that those bags can breathe. Because especially when it's getting hotter, those bags are going to start sweating and might start to break down. Mine typically will last a week just fine. But then another good tip is to just make sure you're not putting in too much liquid. So for example, if you had a lot of cut up watermelon in your fridge, before I put that in my organics, I'd probably drain out the liquid and then put it in the organics. But again, I find with the bags I'm using, it's not typically breaking down in a week.
I just mentioned that I'm all in favor of buying locally, but if you want to get an idea of what sizes are available, a quick look at Amazon will give you an idea of what's out there on the market, and then hopefully you can find it and buy it locally.
Yeah. And as Jane mentioned, we will be giving everyone a voucher. It'll be mailed out to you in April to pick up a free box of 130 of those 3-gallon, which is the kitchen container size bags. And then if you just bring that voucher into Fratelloni's, in Bloomington, it's located by the Lunds and Byerly's, and they will give you a free box of those 3-gallon bags to get you started. And that will give you, again, just kind of another good sense of how that works. If you want to buy that 13-gallon size, which would be like the next step up, like what you might have under your sink right now for garbage. That size is also available at most all of the stores that carry compostable bags that we showed you earlier in the presentation. So.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Someone asked, can wax paper be composted?
So yeah, that could be composted. Again, or sorry, you want to make sure that it says that it's BPI certified, and then that is okay and can be compostable. So that'll be just like the parchment paper. You'll find some brands that are BPI certified now that you can buy. Otherwise, the wax paper would be garbage. And that'd be the same for any other sort of waxy paper like a butcher wrap or a butter wrapper. You'd want to make sure you're putting those in the garbage unless you know that they're BPI certified.
And then we had another question, or kind of more of a statement maybe, but things like pizza boxes, which are bigger, those obviously won't fit in the small size container in the kitchen. I think Jane mentioned earlier that those can go right into the cart without having to be in one of the bags, a paper bag or a compostable bag, right?
Right, yes. Those can just go straight into your cart.
So here's kind of a little bit of a stumper. They are asking about newspaper that would be used in bird cages. So obviously a little bit of biomaterial might be involved.
Yeah, that's a great question. The guidance that we've received from the MPCA on that would be any sort of animal bedding. So that would probably include that newspaper should go in the garbage, just because that could be contaminated.
Another question is, can we add shredded paper?
So that is a good question, and something that the composting facilities have had a little bit more conversation about recently, and they would rather not receive shredded paper. So that shredded paper also is something that is difficult for the recycling facilities because it's so small and it's hard to get sorted out correctly. So at this time, shredded paper, if you do generate that, would either go in your garbage, or there are some opportunities to bring bring paper directly to a shredding event where it's collected and recycled in bulk. But otherwise, that material should go in your garbage.
And here's a question we like. Will any compost be available to residents who are participating in the program?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. So as Jane mentioned, we are working on some opportunities to get compost back to residents. We know that it really does show the full circle process of composting, and those of you that are composting in your backyard probably like the fact that you can get that material back right away. So that's something that we're still kind of finalizing the details on, but is something that we do want to make available probably at different events throughout the year where residents could come and pick up some compost.
Someone asked if Jane could show the special squirrel spray again.
Yes, I can.
I know the squirrels are always the thing. And another question that we have is wondering if we could put yard waste in the containers.
I can answer this one.
Sure.
You're going to want to avoid putting yard waste in your organics recycling container just because there's a dedicated yard waste time for when you can dispose of that. I guess if you wanted to dispose of your yard waste, you can take it directly to a recycling facility for yard waste. Is that correct?
Yeah, so within the city's garbage and recycling program, residents can sign up for yard waste service and have that picked up through the city. And then there are a couple privately owned yard waste facilities where residents can take material directly to a facility.
think it gets confusing when you say we can put like plants in there, because then people have started to assume yard waste. I'll throw away this. I'll put this dirt in there. I'll put the shrub in there. So that, see, I have a dead plant. I'm waiting till yard waste to put the dead plant in. But I had a little question about pizza boxes. I buy it already frozen. Are those containers? Are you just talking about the kind you get from a pizza delivery place?
Right, the pizza delivery boxes.
Okay.
And so,
Frozen,
yeah, yeah, because that might have a plastic lining in there.
I bet.
Yeah, and then regarding the yard waste, kind of, I guess how we try to communicate it out to residents, and I think we'll definitely need to make sure we're making that clear, is any sort of plant waste that's generated from inside your home, like cut flowers you might receive, you can put that in your organics. But any yard waste that's getting generated from outside of your home, like those leaves, would be something that should be managed through your yard waste container. Sorry.
Could people mute, please, if they're not speaking?
Okay.
Okay, any other questions before we move
I guess
along?
there's one or two other questions, Jane, that I see.
Okay.
There's a few questions about decorative birthday napkins or colored napkins and whether or not those could go in. So that would be something that could be composted. The ones you'd want to avoid would be anything that might have glitter or any other like synthetic material. So if there's a shine on it or any glitter, those types of napkins should go in the garbage. But a napkin with some dye in it would be okay. And again, like plates, the birthday plates, if it is a regular old like white Dixie plate or an unbleached paper plate, those are okay because there's absolutely no shine on them. So those don't necessarily need to be BPI certified. However, any other type of plate that might be shiny that you want to buy, you want to make sure that that's BPI certified. And that would be the same for like any sort of cups or bowls that you're purchasing for an event as well. And then lastly, I just see a question to repeat when residents can pick up those containers.
Oh, okay. I'll just go back to the slide.
And Laura, there was another question too about whether or not neighborhoods could have a shared container.
Okay. Yeah. So the containers, we can say quickly here, we will be at the farmers market this Saturday, so you can come on by to the farmers market from 9 to 1 p.m. That's an indoor market that's held at Civic Plaza, where you'll see a table that you can pick up the containers. And then you also can come to the Public Works building on Thursday, March 17th, and we'll just have a table set up right in the public entry of Public Works. So you'll see us right when you walk in the building if that time worked out better for you. Regarding sharing containers, I think the official city response is on our end, we really want to make sure we understand how many people are participating in the program. And so one of the best ways that we can do that is to have folks sign up for a cart and have their own cart. It's also, especially as this program is getting started, we want to make sure that residents are only putting the right material in their carts. So if you're sharing carts with some neighbors, it's going to be harder for us to know where some of that contamination might be happening. So we would encourage you to get your own cart for your home.
Another question here in the chat. Somebody asked about oatmeal cartons if they remove the plastic ring at the top.
Sure, that's a good question. So again, I would go back to is there a shine or not on that container? And so kind of the insides of those containers are going to be shiny, and then you have to assume that there's some sort of plastic lining in there.
And another question, how many gallons or what are the dimensions of the city provided kitchen container?
That container is, I think, just over 3 gallons. So it fits that 3-gallon bag. I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head, but it fits, I guess I'd say it's the one I was showing earlier today. So it's maybe about like 12 inches by 6 by 12, something like that. So.
And here's one additional question. Are BPI certified products easy to find in Bloomington grocery stores?
Yes, I would say they are. Kind of as Ellen mentioned, you can find some of those different plates and cups at most grocery stores now, next to the other kind of supplies that they're selling for events. And those BPI bags, as we showed on the map, are also available at most of the grocery stores and hardware stores within Bloomington.
Can we do Chipotle baskets?
Ooh, that's a good question. So there's no shiny lining on the inside of those containers. So then those are fine to put in your organics.
Great question. One other question about plants. They're wondering if the roots and dirt can be composted as well. And I'm presuming this is like for a house plant.
Sure. So the roots would be okay, and then we don't want the dirt to be added into the organics. So then that's something that you would manage separately.
Would you repeat that other person's question about some kind of container?
Oh, sure. They were asking specifically about the Chipotle, like a Chipotle bowl container.
Okay.
Yes.
Chipotle is what I missed. Thanks.
And then this is also kind of a question about the birthday napkins and plates again. And again, the question is, we can do that. We can compost only if they have the BPI label.
Yes. Again, any plate or cup with the shiny lining needs to have that BPI label, and those can go in. The paper plates that have no lining on them, so there's no shine at all, like those white Dixie plates or an unbleached paper plate, those you can put in, and they don't need to be like a BPI certified plate because there's no lining on it.
Okay, we have another question here. Somebody who will be out of town on the dates when we're going to be handing out the containers, wondering if there would be another opportunity to come and pick one up at some time.
Sure, yes. We are going to try and be at some more farmers markets throughout the year. And we'll also try and find another date in April where residents can come pick up those containers from Public Works. And if you really want a container and you can't make any of those events, you can probably email myself or Jane and we can help get you a container. So.
I just wanted to jump in and clarify something on pizza. There's questions about pizza cartons. The issue with pizza cartons is the bottom is generally contaminated with grease. That can't be recycled. That can be composted. If the top of the box is clean, it's better to recycle that. Ellen, correct me if I made any errors there.
Nope, that's probably a good call. Most people don't want to necessarily rip the box apart. So with a greasy pizza box, I would suggest putting it in the organics. But if you have kind of that material that's like a pizza box that's really clean, that can go in the recycling. And again, those are the pizza boxes from like a pizza parlor, not ones that would be from the freezer. We have a question. Will all residents be charged for organics regardless if using a cart?
Yeah, so the way that the program has been set up is a charge for all homes, and that's very similar to how our regular recycling program operates. And to give a little bit more background, this is a conversation that we had pretty in depth with City Council and our Sustainability Commission as we planned this program. And we looked at quite a lot of information and research from other cities that have composting programs in place. And those cities that did roll out the program as a subscription where not everyone pays, the monthly cost for the program was like three or four times higher than our program. So residents could be paying, $15 or $20 per month for that cart. And that high price really deterred participation, and the cities would see like a 5 to 8% participation overall. So as we know, really the goal of our program is to divert as much material as we can from the garbage. And to do that, we want as many people as possible to participate. So by charging all homes for the program, we're able to bring that cost down quite a bit and really encourage a much higher participation rate. So kind of based on all of that research, we found City Council and the Commission really ultimately felt like it was a better choice for us to have this be something that all residents are charged for.
So here's another question. What about dust collected by a bagless vacuum cleaner?
It's a good question. And this one is a little bit tricky, but again, to be on the safe side, that material should not go in your organics. And that's because it could contain some plastics or maybe some synthetic fibers from your carpet. So it's best to put that material in the garbage.
And here's a question about what exactly the charge is per household.
It is $5.50 a month for the program. So that will go on your regular utility bill, and the bill you receive and pay every other month. So then every other month you'll see that an $11 charge for those 2 months of service. So
there's some discussion of space for carts. One person said that they were able to downsize their large garbage cart to a small garbage can, and that the two smaller cans that they have, I think, for organics and for recycling kind of fit in the space that their large container was taking up previously. And so they kind of shared that with the group. And then somebody who said that they may not have enough space at the end of their driveway to accommodate 4 different containers, and wondering how they might deal with that. I'm not sure what the 4 containers would be. So I think we would have I suppose yard waste, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we recognize that it is another cart for residents to manage. Your recycling cart, you'd only be setting out every other week. And I think, the haulers are aware and are okay with having those 4 carts out. And so I think we recognize that we'll need to make space on the street or the curb for those carts as they're set out for collection. Again, I know that this program isn't just unique to Bloomington. This is something that has been rolled out and is used in several other cities throughout the metro, where residents do have a separate cart for each material and kind of have found different ways to manage the storage of those carts. And again, it's not something that you're obligated to do. If the program doesn't work for you, you're of course not obligated to use that organics cart.
Doesn't the city say that we shouldn't put the garbage containers in the street, but in the winter, when especially people that have just a single entrance, and if they have to get in and out for work, that's really hard to line up all that stuff there, and you can't really put it on the side on the grass because you've got the big snow drifts there. So that's why I've heard most of my neighbors say it's a space issue. That's why they asked if they could use mine, but I don't know that I want to attract more squirrels.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Ellen. If you were gonna...
Well, I was going to say somebody had asked if it was okay to put their carts on the street.
Yes. And for collection, it is okay to have that up on the street against your curb. Of course, you need to make sure you're taking that off. And I would, if you live on a very busy street, I would maybe suggest that you're putting that on the curb rather not in the street there, but it is okay to have that in the street for collection.
And a question about how much space needs to be between each cart when putting them out so the haulers can access them.
Right. So the haulers, most all do use the automated arm. So they do like to have a couple feet in between each cart so they can safely kind of grab your cart.
I think that captured most of the questions in the chat box. If we missed any, please speak up and let us know, but I think that caught most of them.
We do also have some time at the end for more questions. There's no more questions. We can just...
I think Jane was going to share with us a little information about food waste, kind of how to reduce your food waste as another environmental tip to composting.
Okay, yeah. So again, there will be some more time in like a couple minutes for another Q&A session. So I just wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about food waste reduction because it's super important, probably one of the more important steps you can take as a consumer to reduce your carbon footprint. If you reduce the amount of food waste you produce on top of participating in the organics recycling program, you can make a huge impact on the waste stream. And these are some stats from the Natural Resource Defense Council, who conducted this study in the United States. And in the United States, on average, 400 pounds of food goes uneaten per person per year. Growing, processing, transporting, and disposing of that uneaten food has an annual estimated cost of around $218 billion, costing the household, a household of four, an average of like $1,800 annually, which is a lot. Wasting this much food is equivalent to 37 million passenger vehicles worth of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's 2.6% of all US gas emissions annually. Not only does this waste money, it wastes water, fertilizer, croplands, it wastes calories per person, and 21% of US landfill content, and the #1 contributor by weight to landfills is organic material that could be composted. And this is why it's so important to be conscious about food choices and composting your food waste. So why reducing food waste on top of composting is important. It'll save you money because uneaten food you throw away is also wasted money. It diverts waste from waste streams, so reducing food waste helps achieve the county's goals of reducing the amount of material landfilled and sent to incinerators. It also helps improve the efficiency of HERC because organic material is hard to incinerate. And it helps people. Leftover food can be donated to food shelters, and there are increasingly innovative ideas for reducing food waste. The compost industry in Minnesota alone supports around like 700 jobs, and it has like a GDP of like 148 million. So it's really awesome to support. So here are a couple of ideas for reducing food waste. You can repurpose your food scraps into recipes to minimize what you throw out. So some ideas that I've seen are turning wilted greens like spinach or kale into pestos. So you can throw these in a blender with some fresh garlic, lemon, basil, olive oil, salt, some pine or walnuts, and some optional Parmesan into, and make a healthy pesto that you can throw on pastas or crackers. You can turn bruised fruits into pies or tarts. So bruised apples make great pies or crumbles. And you can freeze your food scraps and boil them with water to make flavorful broths and stocks. So this can be onion peels, bones, and other food scraps, and you always want to compost your food scraps after. So some other tips are meal planning and making shopping lists so that you only buy what you need, and this will help you stay on track and not buy excess food that you'll end up throwing out. And storing your food properly is really important. This will extend the shelf life of produce and reduce what you're disposing of. For example, you can store your parsley in a cup of water and it will last a lot longer. SaveTheFood.com is run by the NRDC as well, and it's a really, really great resource for reducing food waste. They have tools for meal planning, meal prepping, dinner guest guides, so you know exactly how much food to make without wasting any. And they have loads of recipes that make sure nothing goes to waste. And Hennepin County also offers some waste reduction challenges and resources on their website. And these challenges are like really easy and fun to do at home. So yeah, I don't think the polls are working, so I don't think we're going to have a final poll, but we will probably have a short survey emailed out to participants of this workshop so we can get a little bit of feedback on it. And yeah, last words. These are mine and Laura's contact information. If you have any questions about item acceptability or home setup tips, you could contact Laura or I. And if you have service-related questions, you should contact utility billing. And the phone number was earlier in this presentation, which will be available for you to access after this workshop is over. So yeah, I guess we'll take any final questions here.
Laura and Jane, one question that's in the chat is, will haulers be using trucks that are comparable in size to the trash and recycling trucks? He's concerned, I guess, about wear and tear on the streets.
Yeah, so each hauler will kind of choose the trucks that they're using. I know that some of them are using a bit of a smaller truck to collect the organics simply because there's not going to be as much material. Regarding the wear and tear on the streets, that is correct, that there will be one more truck going down the block to collect this organic material. However, it still is really significantly less wear and tear on the streets than in our open system of collection, when haulers might each have, upwards of maybe 20 or so trucks on your block to collect that material. So the one additional truck on the street is not going to be something that's going to be too detrimental to the wear and tear on our streets in Bloomington, if that makes sense.
And then, Laura, we do have some questions about the rules for storing carts in yards and driveways. Are there some specific rules that the city has related to that people should be aware of?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do stipulate some of that information in our city code. And one thing that I'll make sure we do after this presentation is take all of these questions and write some answers and email that out to everyone, because I know that there were a lot of great detailed questions, and I'll include that specific cart storage information as well. But briefly, there is a requirement about how long the cart can be at the collection point. I believe it's 12 hours. So you can have your cart at the curb up to 12 hours after your collection point, and then you're obligated to bring that back. And then the next kind of rule about where you store your cart is your cart can be outside. It does not need to be screened. It does not need to be kept inside of your garage. But there is a requirement about the number of feet from your neighbor's home. So I believe it can't be more than 30 feet from your neighbor's home. And again, I can send out that specific information. And then again, it has to be more than 30 feet from the curb. So your storage location cannot be at the curb. You need to make sure that you're pulling that back and storing it.
And I thought I had heard that it was like 5 feet from your dwelling, so it can't be halfway out there as well.
Yeah, there's that requirement as well. So again, I can send out the specific feet in the email, but essentially the rules are you can't have your storage location be at your collection point, and it doesn't need to be stored inside of your garage. So good questions.
One last question here is someone asked if we wanted to talk just a little bit about reduced methane production from organics as opposed to when things break down in a landfill.
Yeah, that is a great point. And again, that's one of the main reasons that we want to be diverting this material from the garbage, because we know that when organic material breaks down in a landfill, that will produce methane, which is one of our most potent greenhouse gases. So we really want to avoid the production of that methane. As we mentioned, our garbage goes to a waste to energy facility here in the metro area, and it gets a little bit more complicated, but by not putting that material in the waste to energy facility, we're able to also really free up more capacity at landfills by bringing more material to HERC and making sure that organic material is processed in the right location, if that makes sense. So ultimately, we're helping to kind of help to achieve the county's goal of zero waste to landfills by allowing that material that really there's nowhere else to go but go to HERC, be burned, and compost those organics that should be managed in a more environmentally efficient way. And then kind of on top of that, the compost itself can help reduce a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions from fertilizers, because we know that we can use compost to help fertilize our plants to grow better and avoid using synthetic fertilizers that have a very, very high carbon footprint in the production of that material. So on that other flip side, we're able to really reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well. So,
and one last question came in here, and that is about dental floss. Can that be put in the organics?
Good question. We're getting all sorts of big questions and then really detailed. So the dental floss would, again, there's probably two types. If you're certain that your dental floss does not contain plastic, then that can go in the organics. But most dental floss probably has some plastic in there and should go in the garbage. Good questions.
I think that's all we have in the chat right now, Laura. So I don't know if there are other questions out there, but those are the ones from the chat box right now.
Great. So as I mentioned, we will be sure to respond to all of these questions in an email, and then we'll send that out to the group so you guys can have this for your records. And we are recording the presentation, and we'll make we are holding 3 of these workshops, so we'll be sure that at least one of these workshop recordings is available on our website for folks to view later. And I believe they'll also play this on Bloomington cable, so it people can just catch it on TV as well. So
great. I think that about wraps it up then.
Well, great.
Great. Thank you everyone for coming and listening to our presentation about organics recycling. I hope everyone learned a ton. Keep on the lookout for those resources that Laura said she would send out to you at a later time. Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yes, and thank you, everyone.
Good luck composting.